I'll introduce our speaker, Natalie Lord of Formworks Design Group. Formworks was started in March of 2017 with the intent of creating a highly experienced boutique firm focusing on the practice of historic preservation and civic architecture. Their firm brings together two accomplished preservation architects who have led the practice of historic preservation in Colorado for over a decade. Consolidating passions and skill sets into one firm has yielded a thoughtful, energetic, and nimble firm that can best serve the varying design and preservation needs in Colorado. And I can attest to that as they're my consultant on the Tom's Diner project. The partners of Formworks are licensed architects and trusted leaders in historic and civic architecture. Have completed innumerable projects throughout the state of Colorado. Their firm has an easy and confident relationship with clients, built on trust, shared values, and years of collaboration. So with that, Natalie, the talk titled A Look at Farview Visitor Center and the Pulliam Community Building. Natalie.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, so we'll cover a bit about the building history, as well as our involvement for its hopeful reuse. So far, what we've done is we've completed what's called a historic structures report, working with the Mesa Verde Museum Foundation as well as History Colorado. So this project was funded in part by the National Park Service and History Colorado, the state historical funds. They kind of partnered together. To give you some context, so Mesa Verde is obviously most famous for the 12th and 13th century cliff dwellings. These unique structures led to the establishment of Mesa Verde as not only a national park, but as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1906. So through the 1920s, various structures related to park tourism were constructed. These were largely funded by the John D. Rockefeller family. In addition to the 1920s structures, several buildings were constructed in the 1930s. Most of these structures were designed in what became known as the Pueblo Revival style. So here's a quick timeline of kind of the progression of Mesa Verde. And right before the 1956 Park Service launched what was called the Mission 66 initiative, and this was really to put a huge amount of funding back into our national parks. So Farview was designed as part of this Mission 66 plan. And in 1962, a park master plan for visitor services were completed. So most of you know Mesa Verde is located near Cortez and Durango in southeast Colorado. The visitor center at the time was decided to be located approximately 15 miles inside the park. So this is the highway as you're coming to Cortez. Cortez is right up here. And the actual main gate into Mesa Verde is much closer. So for any of you who've been down there more recently, they just built a brand new visitor center right by the front gate. But in Mission 66, it was decided they were expecting a huge amount of people to come to the parks. So they really wanted to disperse the population a little bit more. So that was the decision in putting the visitor center so far into the park. So the visitor center was designed to be closely associated with the Farview Lodge. There's a connection under the road. Let me get to this little. It's just playing on its own. So in 1962, the drawings for the master plan were originally done by John Anderson. He was the original founder of Anderson Mason Dale out of Denver. But you can see that he has a large rectangular plan. And then basically the park scratched that completely and went with a plan by Joseph and Louise Marlow. The Marlows were a husband and wife team best known for their modern single-family homes in the Hilltop neighborhood. So the Marlows worked on a design in 1962 and 63. During the design period, there was debate over what would be the use inside the building. So you can see the unique Kiva style was really what inspired the shape of the building and the experience around the site of approach. Um, Even during construction, the changes inside the building happened. They decided to scrap the idea of having an auditorium and instead have more display cases and a museum exhibit. So, what's interesting about this is that they determined the period of significance was from 1964 to 1968, which was prior to the building even being open, but it did span kind of this design change process that happened. So here are some of the drawings that kind of happened between that redesign. You can see the original larger auditorium was scrapped for a smaller one on the left. And then here's the current plan. So the historic plan was really grainy, but this is our HSR plan that shows you can kind of see that basically the original design is still there, which is great. So again, this was kind of a joint effort between the Park Service and History Colorado. The difference between an HSR and an HSA is they're pretty similar. It really focuses on the existing conditions. What sort of deterioration are we looking at? Cataloging the existing conditions and what changes have happened over time, which I'll get into shortly. We had some great historic photos during construction to work off of. Um, and we also were able to work closely with museum staff that had a lot of records of what had been changed through time. So, obviously, the character defining features of the building included site context, including that historic approach kind of around on the ramp, the building form, the original materials, and the interior form and layout. So, I mentioned that you came across the site kind of under the highway through this tunnel that you can see on the upper right. And then you came out into this nice open plaza and came up the ramp and around the building. So our viewing platform is still intact, and you'll see some photos shortly that'll have some of the subtle changes that happened over time. Um, the first floor is really interesting. It was a utilitarian use for offices, utility space, and the building is really supported by this central round column, and it cantilevers out from that. It's a reinforced concrete structure and is really unique, I think. They use that center open space to run mechanical up through the building, and then also do some really like very cool beam cantilevers, which you'll see. Original materials at the lower level include great glazed bricks, ooh, glazed brick concrete floors, and original interior doors with transoms. Rehabilitation of these materials is recommended to accommodate a new use, but we decided this wasn't really a critical piece. You can see kind of the comparison of the historic photo and a current photo, that a lot of those original key features are there. I think one of the major losses, which you'll see momentarily, is that great historic storefront, which did get changed out in the 1960s. So here's a little bit of a view that shows you that entry plaza. It's hard to see in this one, but there's actually, they added chain link onto that really delicate modernist railing to make it slightly more safe. And then here's a better picture of that storefront change. So we do hope eventually to bring this back, but again, it's not really a critical item. And really, the critical items for the building related to sort of the deterioration over time of water getting in through the flat roof. You can see some of that plaster and paint chipping off at the ceiling area near the lights. And then changes that occurred inside really had to do with these horrible like safety penetrations, which just happens over time as you bring in sprinklers and fire alarm and whatnot. So here's another close up showing that ramp from below. Really minor deterioration considering the age of this building. And then some of those penetrations that happen just with mechanical units and whatnot. You can see the chain link a little bit better. So I think one of the other elegant pieces of the building is really this lower staircase that spins around. You've got the great, you know, curving ramp, but you also have this staircase that comes down from above to the lower level. And here's some more close-up images of the deterioration of the concrete. Again, barely just superficial at this time, but on the list of things that we wanted to take care of. The roof had been replaced, but probably needs to be replaced again now that the building's over 50 years old. And here's just a great comparison between the two structures, or the historic photo and what we see currently. Okay, the Pulliam Community Building is located at on Cleveland Avenue, just to the south of the historic downtown. The building was basically a WP era Works Project Administration project, which, as many of you know, was funded through Roosevelt's campaign to get Americans back to work during the 30s. But the other part of that was that it was funded by Lillian and D.T. Pulliam. So they offered $20,000 at seed money. This is a picture of their family. In order to create sort of the first city hall / community building for the city of Loveland. So the total original funding was $140,000, and it was completed in 1939. So it was actually 2 WPA era grants. That one was going to be for City Hall and one was going to be for an auditorium building. Loveland City Council decided to combine those 2 grants and create one building that could house both. So D.T. Pulliam was the first president of Loveland First National Bank. Obviously a staple member of the community. Here's another view of the Pulliam very early on. However, this was probably in the 1940s. So one thing that we started doing was comparing the original facade with this later 20 year later photograph. And what we noticed was the original clock arms, which were kind of a thin, Art Deco metal, got changed out to be as thick black arms, which we felt were a little bit clunky. And there's even thicker arms on the building right now. So we think what happened was everybody decided you couldn't actually read the clock with the thin aluminum arms, and they decided to change them out to kind of a thicker plywood structure. Another change that you'll see shortly is that they added an accessible ramp onto the building, which blocked half of this great grand stair, and also theseAux windows here. You can see that. Part of the Works Project Administration was really to put people back to work, so they weren't focused on spending a bunch of extra money on materials, and therefore this is a solid concrete building. So the weight of the different thicknesses vary, but the thickest we have is about 2 feet, which I'll talk about shortly as we try to add accessibility. The overall project history. So Jessica actually started working on this project in 2014 with a historic structures assessment. And obviously this was pre-Formworks. However, in 2017, Loveland Fire Department decided the building was unsafe and closed it. So there was a transfer of ownership between 2014 and the city taking it over by 2017. Our firm was selected in 2017. It's actually our project number 1, which is very cool. And when we first went to the building to start documentation, I realized that I had been there before. So I grew up in Greeley. And I think when I was about 11 years old, my dad was in a guitar competition at the Pulliam where he won a 12 string. So I walked in the building and I was like, I have been here. And actually, my dad currently lives in Loveland in a very cool mid-century house. So it's kind of come full circle, and he's excited to get back on the stage. So in November of 2018 is when we started selective demolition, and construction officially began in February of 2019. The building and the project are quite extensive. So we're actually only completed with phase 1 and 2, but they have just received approval for their next batch of funding. So we're hoping that phase 3 will start here this winter. One of the very unique parts of the Pulliam is the lamella truss roof. So here is that historic photo, which is just great. Um, the lamella truss roof is also known as a Zollinger roof. It was named after Frederick Zollinger. They're very unique structures in that they're made of small, simple prefabricated standard segments that are joined together via bolts or plates, and they form this rhomboid pattern. At the Pulliam, a wooden sheathing covers the structure on the outside, and the lamella truss was originally patented in 1910 and became popular between the world wars, especially in Germany when metal for construction was in very short supply. So these roofs are very inexpensive, they're easy to build, and obviously very elegant. The standard wood segments are very short, making them easily mass produced, and there's no need for kind of an extensive scaffolding to construct them. You can build the pieces and sort of start spanning across the room. So here's some current photos of the Pulliam roof. For those of you who are less familiar with the WPA, again, mentioning those simple materials, this is actually covered in just a very simple kind of a composite fiberboard. And fortunately for the Pulliam, none of this was ever painted, so we don't have to worry about stripping it. The walls and the fiberboard that is on the areas around the windows, so it's solid concrete, but in those recesses is the fiberboard. So that did get painted, but fortunately the roof did not. Just as an anecdote, when I was in architecture school out in San Diego, our studio building had a lamella truss roof, and my professor said that there are actually very few of these structures left around the country because of a lot of them were lost to fire or extensive loading. So we really feel like the Pulliam roof is probably, I don't know that it's the only one in Colorado, but it's probably one of very few. So if any of you come across one, please let me know. Obviously, the roof loading is a huge concern. JVA, Christine didn't work on this project, but JVA is the structural engineer for the project. So one of our concerns during this multi-phase project was really to keep the building heated. We took the boiler system offline in 2018 in order to replace all the plumbing and abate the building. So one thing we did, which I'll show you some photos of, is our temporary heat system that we put in right away. And the city of Loveland monitors everything very carefully to make sure we don't have any snow loading during the winters and risk collapse of the structure. So the other unique piece, again, it's a very simple building beyond some of these pieces, but the other unique piece that's very decorative is the terrazzo floors. So here's an image of the main lobby, and then I showed kind of a plan of what that actually looks like. It's kind of got this electrified look, but it also has that lamella truss pattern in the floor. So we definitely are highlighting that elsewhere. So to talk a little bit about what's happening in the building, it's an assembly space, so A3 occupancy, a community hall, and when we did the load calculation, there was well over 14,000 occupants if it was fully loaded. And I'll talk about how we actually reduced that down, but what you're seeing up in the upper right is our current occupant load. And as you can see from this original demo plan, basically, those two egress stairs that are between column lines 9 and 10, not only were they undersized in that they were less than 36 inches, but they were very steep. They didn't comply with current codes. So trying to get, 1,300 people out of the building was why the fire department basically shut it down. While we were at it, we decided that accessibility could be done much better. So as I mentioned, there's a concrete ramp that got added onto the building, which really changes the historic facade. And the only accessible path was to this main first floor auditorium. The other kind of clunky part was this lift, which I'll show you in the main lobby. Um, the other challenge that we have with the 1936 building is that there's over 12 levels. So I tried to highlight them all. The lowest level is the boiler room, which obviously we don't need that to be accessible. But we have this lower basement level, which I'll talk about, where we're incorporating new restrooms at the basement level. And then we have the basement level. Then there's this intermediary floor, which was the green room. So these are under the stage. The main entry vestibule, which is about 3 feet off of grade, the main floor, the stage, the second floor, and then kind of these 4 levels of the balcony. So the lowest level of the balcony aligns with the second floor, but then there's these higher levels. So great experientially if you are able to walk, but hard to get anywhere if you're in any way not able bodied. So, and then obviously the final floor, which is the projection room, which is very cool. So this is that accessible path. You can see they did, the nice thing is they did do it, the ramp in concrete, but it really changes kind of that front experience of coming to the Pulliam and how you get through the front door. And on the left is our great accessible lift, which takes about a minute and a half even just to get up to the main floor level. And it just really detracts from that historic front vestibule and covers up a lot of the terrazzo. So here was our solution. We decided that the main east entry was really critical historically, and we wanted to take off the ramp and change how people came in. We did some studies on where to put this elevator, how to get to as many of the levels as we possibly could. And what we came up with was we would put an elevator on the southeast portion of the building. It would be accessed from outside, come up to a new elevator lobby, which aligns with the first floor. So the levels here between column lines 1 and 3 are at that lower vestibule level. And these were historically just office space. So what we decided to do is that we would basically make these storage or the admin offices for anybody for the theater, that basically that level could not be fully accessed, which was kind of our compromise. But you come in, you're able to get to the first floor. There's the ticket booth here. We added an accessible restroom so that you don't need to take the elevator to the basement or to the second floor to get to an accessible restroom. And as I mentioned, we had to reduce down the occupancy even more, just so that these back stair towers didn't have to be over 5 feet wide, which would then trigger us to have a center railing down the middle of the stair. So that was basically our driving force, was how to make it so we didn't have to have center railing in the stair towers. So we took out the stairs that were between 9 and 10 and added landings. But that cut off the green room level, and basically we had to scrap the green rooms at their current level as more storage kind of utility space. So it's a little bit strange, but this is how we dealt with 12 levels in a historic building. We did decide that we were going to bring accessibility to the stage so that if it was used, the Pulliam is really used for a lot of different things. And we not only wanted to make sure that we responded to the fire department and like safety concerns, but we really wanted to listen to how the community wanted to use the building. So we talked to not only like music and arts and venues folks, but we also met with people who have rented the Pulliam in the past for graduations, for square dancing, for all the plethora of uses. So we did want to make sure that for graduation, somebody could get to the stage easily without having to, have a portable lift that would come into the building. So blue shows you our vertical accessibility, and red is our bathroom accessibility. So the other things that we did to reduce um, occupant load, which I'm hoping that I really had to fight the Loveland folks because we've got this great window wall and they wanted this second bar and storage area. The building and stairs work without it. So what I've convinced them to do is first phase just to build this north bar, which backs up to a concrete wall. No great windows or views out of the building. And then hopefully not ever build this south side, which would block 4 of our great steel windows. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that happens. But yes, auditorium, you can direct exit out to these new stair towers. We did have to, again, do a lot of saw cutting and lowering of levels in order to provide new access up to the stage level. Because again, you came out and came up the stairs or down the stairs with those great historic stairs that we have to take out. So here's our basement level. Again, we had to reduce these large areas for different uses, but we moved the green room use over here between column lines 8 and 9. So we've got an accessible green room that has a shower, a roll-in shower, and then we created large bathrooms down in the lower level that are accessible as well. So again, to fight this level change between 1 and 3 and 3 and 10, we have the elevator where we're coming down at basement level and then ramping down to this lower level. And we're preserving the lobbies as is, which was another one of those critical pieces since those decorative terrazzo floors were big. Something to be saved. The other safety issue was that you used to egress through a commercial kitchen. So we decided to take the commercial kitchen out of the building and change it to more of a warming/catering kitchen, and make that the corridor through to the new stair towers. And here we are up at the second floor and the balcony level. So the elevator comes up to a nice second floor lobby space. And the future plan is to put a lift or ramp somewhere in this area to get up to our mezzanine level. This is going to be basically an infill, but not in a way that couldn't be reversed. So it'll be framed in wood framing over those concrete risers at the balcony level. They wanted to do this not only for a sound booth area, but also to have an accessible platform so people could observe from this upper floor. There's this really great, unfortunately, a lot of it has to be restored, but a great boardroom up here. So this will be accessible again. And the historic bathrooms up here, which have 6-foot high terrazzo wainscot, will be kept as is. So how the current code is written, you can basically be within one level of an accessible restroom. And we decided these second floor ones were really special, so we wanted to save them as is. So here is where the Pulliam is to date. As I mentioned, we're in about to hopefully start phase 3. Phase 1 was building the south stair tower, which is this one. And then phase 2 was to build the north stair tower. And you can see we really tried to do an homage to the Art Deco style, but differentiate the addition from the historic. We also put the vertical windows between to really give some relief between the historic wall and the new addition. And these are those mechanical units that I was talking about. They're terribly ugly. They're actually salvaged rooftop units from another City of Loveland building that we put up on platforms and routed them temporarily down in through the historic louvers in order to make sure that that lamella truss didn't get loaded over the winter. So here's a photo of what the building looks like after the ramp was removed. Still in a little bit of rough shape, so we're going to have to do some rehabilitation of the concrete here. And unfortunately, we were hoping that we could just take off the ramp and the stair would be intact. But that was not to be, so we had to recreate the historic grand stair. This is them molding it. Like I said, this is quite a challenge as far as all the saw cutting that needed to happen. This is a view inside one of the new stair towers, and this is the center photo on the bottom is us cutting through the stage structure and reconnecting down into that green room space that got cut off basically when the stair towers or the historic stair towers were removed. This is an old window that got enlarged, so the door opening is now here below it. And this all got infilled with new board form concrete. The other fun part of the project was putting a new elevator shaft through all 4 of those stories. I always love taking elevator shaft photos. And then one of our design features was to sort of highlight that design from the terrazzo in the elevator cab. So this is our little elevator overrun shaft, which we tried to blend as well as we could, while, differentiating it from the historic piece. And here's some more photos. We really tried to, obviously all the new railings are slightly different in that they meet current code. So the spacing of the spindles is obviously much closer and the heights of the railings are higher, but we really wanted to mimic the patterns that were part of the poem because we wanted to make sure that they would all fit. So this image is the stage, basically. Here's the new wall and then the new lower level as we're coming up. And some railings. This is the ramp down to the basement level. More fun views during construction of we call them our ground top units. They're terribly not attractive. Again, one of the major challenges was providing plumbing, like safety for fire sprinkler and fire alarm. This is our new underground plumbing for the future bathrooms, which will hopefully be going in, and the ramp that connects that basement level elevator lobby down to the new bathroom. So there will be a wall here separating out the men's and the women's room. One of the really cool things that we found during demolition was this old Works Project Administration poster, which was also a little ominous because it says, "If you take a chance, you may take a life." So it was just kind of a cool piece of history that we found. Another piece that was really neat about this was that behind that pressed fiberboard at the walls was this really unique insulation, which is basically kind of a compilation of torn paper that was pressed into sort of a 2-inch thick insulation board. So a unique 1936 building material. And here's kind of a cool historic photo of just folks, as soon as it moves, of folks in front of the Loveland Community Building. So at some point, the Loveland was taken off, I think in 1988 when city council voted to change the name of the Pulliam to the Pulliam. They decided to take the Loveland off. But since then, since City of Loveland now owns it again, we are going to recreate the Loveland and put it back. And the other piece are these great art moderne / art deco sconces, which will be recreated.
I didn't see.
I didn't see the name of the original architect.
We don't have the name. That's the one thing I can't seem to find. So yes, if anybody has come across it, but I think based on what I know of WPA era buildings, and maybe we brought Nan and Dave on the phone too. I don't know if they have any resources, but a lot of those were unknown. There was, I know, um, the state annex building. We were working on room 707, which is kind of one of the last rooms in that building that remains. But it was a WPA era building, and there was kind of a conglomerate of artists that formed together in Colorado. So I wasn't sure if the architects kind of did the same thing. There was sort of a group of architects that, starving architects, starving artists, got together to design those buildings. So, does anybody know?
No clue.
Alan, I thought you were going to tell us.
I know. I was waiting for Ellen.
Well, I was just thinking it reminds me a little bit of what the Fullers were doing at that time, but I have no way of knowing.
And Natalie, I don't know who that was because I remember the consortium working on the annex building for the state,
Yeah.
and it's kind of got this deco-ish feel that a variety of different people used at the time. So
Yeah.
it's
But those
kind of
people
one
are
of
normal.
those- Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Because, who was the one that it was? Well, one of the architects was, I believe, last name of White is like to go.
yeah, there were a couple. Quite. I can't remember off the top of my head who would have been the architect of that era. We use actually Fisher did the Larimer.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a Fisher building.
It doesn't, but neither
Like
did
a
the
Fuller,
Larimer.
might have
neither
been
did
Fuller
the,
or Gordon White or
Gordon White, that was the one that did the annex, or he was in the conglomerate.
yeah,
I was just up that.
was trying to think who else it might have been.
Well, Alan, actually, the Fuller and Fuller did the Prowers County Courthouse, which had an odd deco feel to it as well, and they used limestone as well as concrete for that one. It's about the same era, has a lot of the same feel, but I don't think they were working up in that area. They were all over the state. It's just hard to say.
I'll check with Bob. Bob Fuller may know.
Bob may know.
Natalie, marvelous projects. I have a question for you on the far view. It seems as though the the husband and wife designers were really sensitive, but was there any kind of communication that you ran across that might have tied them back to Neutra's cyclorama, which would have been, just the decade before, or Dinosaur National Monument, which also had that big swooping round form and ramp?
I don't recall finding anything, but now that you mentioned that cycle the rum, I was like, yeah, that does look similar. I don't know if the Park Service was sort of, sharing what architects were doing elsewhere, but that would be an interesting connection to make.
Yeah. And also, did you have to make any recommendations in your HSR as to what to do with that ramp that looks a little too steep to meet ABA?
Yeah, so what they'd like to do for the building is turn it into they're hoping to team with CU. I haven't heard whether this is moving forward in any way, but team with CU and use it as a research outpost. So get some students that would go down there and provide actually housing in the lower level, and sort of their classroom slash research facilities at that first floor. But yes, it is technically not accessible. So there was kind of discussions on, do we want to make this fully accessible, or is it kind of one of those historic features that is really important that it's it's not technically super inaccessible if you had some assistance, but yeah, I think where we landed was it should be studied a little bit further and decided on that final use, whether they want to try to put a lift or an elevator inside or outside the building in order to provide actual ADA access. But I think it's such a great building. It would be.
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful.
It doesn't look like it's falling apart.
No.
It looks like it's in great shape, all things
Yeah.
considered.
Exactly. That's why this one's not on our like super, critical watch it and check in every couple of months kind of thing, because it is in fairly good condition. Which was, similar with Pulliam, just a real beefy building. And
Well, how long was Wonderview's kind of sealed up? When did they stop
it's been-
using?
they closed it when they opened the new visitor center, which I think is in 2014 that the new visitor center.
Yeah, is something like
Yeah.
that.
So it's been closed since then, and it does have a pigeon and rat infestation, which is a shame. So it'll have to be abated. But it's a great building.
Question on the Pulliam, how are the acoustics
Great.
with that ceiling?
I know it's really it's a bizarre building because it's concrete, but it does have pretty good acoustics. And yeah, that's my goal is to. I was telling the construction guys, I was like, my dad will walk over and play guitar anytime you want. But that was kind of one of I was like, Dad, we need to get you back on the stage. So I'm hoping that it opens here in the next few years. But we'll see. It does. I think we have approximately $5 million of work left to do on it. The work to date has been about $3 million. But it's always that last bit. So city council, I believe, is voting on whether they got some CARES funding. And I think city council is about to vote on whether they can use that funding, and then this phase 3 will kick off. So fingers crossed. But I was thinking maybe do a tour of these buildings if anybody's interested.
Oh God,
know-
yeah.
But that one might be a little bit of a challenge, but Pulliam at least.
That'd be
Totally.
fantastic.
Natalie, did you say that the Pulliam building that there was Excelsior wood wool insulation in there?
I think that is what it is. It was stamped. Let me see if I can pull up some photos. It was stamped. I didn't want to show too many photos in case it overwhelmed you, but if you want, still see.
Well, while we wait for that, I'm going to formally close the meeting. But of course, we're all welcome to stay on, and hopefully Natalie will answer all of our questions. Fantastic talk, though, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Keep your patience with Farview. I will. I was like, dang, when's it gonna work out? But
So Natalie, while you're looking for that, did you do any analysis of that to see, if it was Excelsior or wood wool? That's probably made out of aspen, but at that time, it wouldn't have come out of Colorado. It probably would have come out of the Great Lakes somewhere. And the reason I'm kind of curious is because Nan had asked that question about the acoustics. So Excelsior was used not only for insulation, but to improve the sound quality of the buildings.
Interesting.
wait, if you have any wood questions, Ron Anthony is on.
That's so
And
true.
he's also, we found out that he's also a fire scientist, which was like a new discovery, but he's just a really cool guy. If any of you have not had a chance to go to one of Ron Anthony's seminars, you definitely need to.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Natalie. You're too kind.
Natalie, you described the structure on that ceiling in the hall. What did you call it again?
A lamella truss?
Lamella truss. Okay, got it. The Lamella is still making things. Is a German company, including biscuits. So I was just kind of curious about that.
A biscuit factory.
So a word on lamella trusses. You will find those in a lot of even more recent, but certainly older domed buildings that were used for storing things like road salt, fertilizer, stuff like that. They often use lamella roofs for that.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Natalie, who did the who was who did the structural analysis on that roof?
That would be JBA. And I don't know, Christine, if you talked to Jeff about it at any point. But yes, it has been of continuous concern. Basically, what we were told by our structural engineer was it can support the lights, and that's it. So that was one of the compromises that we worked to negotiate with fire, was actually running sidewall sprinklers just down the edge of the wall. Doesn't fully cover the center space. But there's about a 20-foot wide section of the center of the Pulliam that's not fully covered by sprinklers. But we really could not hang anything off the structure. So
Was the wood roof damaged at all from water, or is it just the capacity of the connections that was a concern?
it was the capacity of the connections of that lightweight structure.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, now my computer does not want to connect to Zoom.
The way that roof structure is actually reminds me a little bit of the Botanic Gardens building, but the Botanic Gardens is obviously concrete, but it does have that kind of same feel. And I was wondering if that was where the idea came from for it. But I'm sure that's not something you probably know. It just was one of those that's what it made me think of.
I don't know what that structure's date is. Nam, Dave, did you guys work on that one? The Botanical Gardens building?
It's a hornbeam.
I was trying to remember. Gary might know. I'm like, Gary, all the experts are actually on the phone.
Is it 60?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the Mitchell Park Conservatory domes in Milwaukee preceded the Botanical Gardens by a little bit, because that's a similar concrete space frame. But that's just a wild guess on my part, that it might have been something that was of that same period, was being explored by a number of architects.
Mhm.
And if any of you don't know any of the Marlow's other buildings, there are a couple of their commercial buildings on Littleton Boulevard, if anyone is curious.
There's several of their houses in Hilltop.
And there's a couple of their houses down here and one in Golden too, that we discussed a while ago.
Yes. And their own house is on 12th and Oneida, in the corner of 12th and Oneida, opposite Montclair Park.
Didn't they have one in Littleton too that they lived in for a while? Or did they only live in one on?
They did a house in Littleton for Simon Hertzstein, which is now a museum.
Yep, that's the Littleton Museum. I thought they had another house though in Littleton for some reason.
I don't know. I knew them very well.
I'd love to pick your brain on them a little bit more.
You make that one out.
Interesting.
I think I have a better one that shows the name of the installation.
One of the Marlow's houses is a Denver landmark now, the Joshua House.
Mm-hmm. That's a very pretty house, and I'm glad that one got landmarked. I really wish the owners of the building on the what is it right now? I can't remember if it's an architecture firm, the one that used to be a title company on Littleton Boulevard, the one on the south side of Littleton Boulevard, with that great mural. I wish they would landmark that one, but the owners are kind of grumpy. They've taken good care of it, but they don't want to landmark it.
So Natalie, what's the timeline on Farview for?
That's a great question. I will reach now. This has made me want to kind of track down that project. Yeah, I don't know because they, we basically finished the HSR in 2018, and the Park Service has been kind of prioritizing their funding over the last few years. So I know it's on that list. It's just they have quite a few resources to worry about. So I don't know where it is on kind of that critical prioritization list, but there was talk about, sort of putting a bunch of new money into Park Service buildings. I think over the next 20, 25 years. So hopefully it's kind of starting to come up to the top now that it's been 3.5 years. Finish that HSR, but I don't have an update on it right now.
And they've been taking their Mission 66 stuff pretty seriously now, right?
They really, yeah, all of that is now, a period of significant, and obviously just very unique style. So it's gotten a lot of traction. Here's another one, but I don't know that we can see the wording any better. But anyway, Ron maybe recognizes all the tagging.
Yeah, I can't place that, but interesting.
So one great thing is that we are redoing this mechanical system. So all this ductwork is coming out, and we've actually decided not to reinstall the dropped ceiling that used to be here between the ribs because we wanted to really highlight the structure of the balcony above. I can find a good looking up photo. I think that's, the board form concrete is just one of the pieces of the Pulliam that makes it extra special in my mind. So, you will see a lot of this once it's all done. And we've got some new lighting designs that'll basically highlight upwards as part of that, providing enough light for egress at the floor level. If there's a event happening, you got to make sure people can still get out. So those lights will actually be hidden up here, but also provide the added benefit of lighting up the upper areas. And I have a meeting in a couple weeks with the city of Loveland, so I will talk to them about doing a tour. That would be really cool.
That'd be really cool.
And I'm sure you guys won't mind if it's in a state of mid-construction.
I think it's pretty cool. We got to see the Air Force Academy that way, and it's neat to see the structure of the building.
Yeah.
God, can you imagine doing an entire building board form?
All the
Just and then you cover it up, because it's just how you build. It's
Yeah.
like, my God.
So some of the other fun detailing that also got covered up by drop ceilings, which we're bringing back. So this is, again, just that pressed fiberboard, really inexpensive material, but you can see that, 3-step of the Art Deco and curved edges. So just some cool, simple, inexpensive, but neat that they did back then.
Hey, Ron, this is Nan. Are you familiar with beaver board?
Yeah, I know of it. Yeah.
Okay. I just wonder how extensive it was used. Extensively it was used. Because that's what that stuff looks like to me.
Yeah, it's I don't know how extensively it was used, but it's fair to say I've never done a project that had it on it.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. But a lot of my stuff tends to be older than when we would have had beaver board.
Right.
Well, thank you all.
Well, Natalie, I'm going to be real. Well, where'd your face go? Where'd your picture go? Oh. I'm going to be real political here, and I'm going to ask, so what kind of projects do you like working on the most?
A variety of all different age complexities. Pulliam has been really unique just because, yeah, how do you get accessibility and egress out of all those levels? And at some point you do have to make some compromises. So that one was probably one of the, I've really had such a fortunate, knock on wood. I always think like, don't say anything like that. You're gonna like struck by lightning or something. But I've gotten to work on some really cool things from, just little one-room schoolhouses out in the middle of nowhere. Like we just did a project with the BLM. So this unique little community up near Mabel, so right near Dinosaur National Park. Kind of the Wild West kind of community that moved a one-room schoolhouse onto federal property and then got in trouble for it. But documenting that building and then, creating some drawings that'll go into Library of Congress. So we get to do stuff like that. And then we get to work on, state capitol roof and skylight rehabilitation. And it's just kind of a wild variety, but really neat. And that's, I think, one of the best parts of preservation is just those unique challenges that you're trying to figure out the right response and not mess anything up, but yeah, it's nice when you have a personal connection, like pulling in with, my dad. I was like, oh,
That's neat.
kind of feels like my building a little bit, but yeah, it's been fun. Also, Tom's is super cool. Tom's is my favorite, Tom.
Yeah, Tom's is my favorite too.
Cool.
Well, Scott, what was your take on that structure you were looking at?
Talking about Pulliam's?
Yeah.
Well, I like the roof. Of course, if it were concrete, snow load, sprinklers, no, that would be a problem. But the lamella structure is very interesting. And I think one of the pictures you showed, Natalie, was of a concrete aircraft hangar with the lamella structure built right in the concrete. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, have you seen any other lamella structures around Colorado?
I have not. In fact, I made myself a note that if I come across any to let you know.
Cool.
It is pretty unique.
How about you, Carrie? Did you see any other one? You've seen a few buildings.
I would like to know how that goes together. What does that look like, erecting that? Because what are the sections, like 6 foot or something? Or are they even that big?
I think they're a bit smaller, actually. Well, yeah, I think they're about 6 feet, probably. Let me see if I think I found some cool photos of how they built it.
Actually, Wikipedia has a section on lamella arch roof structures that actually has a couple of videos of them going together, both in a test site and then also in a setting in Tanzania where they actually assemble it a section at a time and lift it up into place. It's a fascinating time lapse that gives you a nuance of, oh my God, they're just doing it with standard tools and people. Don't even need a forklift.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
It's like a spider building its web across the thing slowly.
Well, the looking up lamellas, it says that circular wood lamella dome, a predecessor of the Astrodome and Superdome, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Auditorium in Frederick, Oklahoma.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
They are. I've seen churches. I don't remember which one.
I remember one in a couple in the Denver area that have a similar structure, but they're really done with a kind of a spider web that's much more like the Botanic Gardens and done in glue lambs. But they're with arched pieces, not with straight short sections. That's what's really interesting
That's
about
what I'm familiar with.
I'm not finding this, but yeah, I remember seeing that there's an example of kind of how they build it, and they basically just start building the truss and then lifting pieces, adding more in, and just keep lifting it until it's fully in place.
Yep.
And I think because it's just so light, they can. I think I remember reading that they employed 300 people in this building. So
Really?
yeah, that was that whole, pay for labor, not for materials. So yeah, I think it employed about 300 people during the Depression, which is great.
To see the name I'm talking about, Natalie, the one I'm talking about is it's in the open source ecology webpage, wiki.opensourceecology.org, under Lamella Roof. And it has a couple of videos in that. It looks very similar to what you were calling for. But I've always been wondering, as you've been showing this, what's the lateral bracing on this thing? Is there sheathing on the outside and then the insulation, whatever the wood fiberboard would be?
Yeah, so actually the fiberboard was installed from below. There's a quarter round, so that part of the wood that you're actually seeing is only maybe 4 inches deep, but I think they're actually like a 12 by 6. And then yeah, that fiberboard is just pressed in from below. So we haven't disassembled any of it yet, but we did do a roof investigation. And at some point, they did add plywood sheeting on top and about 2.5 inches as insulation before they did like a new TPO roof. We don't know the date on that one, but at some point somebody did beef up the roof insulation and structure. So I think what I read is that lamellas basically had like a plank sheeting over the top of those trusses, most typically, but I don't know for sure what's under there.
Maybe why your walls, were you saying the walls are really thick, Natalie? Because I mean, the lamella is going to thrust out horizontally like an arch on the wall. So that might be why the walls are so thick or have pilasters in them.
Yeah, and those, yeah, you can see those
Yeah.
for columns on the side.
Mm-hmm. Because it's not tied across.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I bet all the sheathing up on top of that is the boards from the board form.
Oh, that's a good one.
Could
I bet. Probably wish.
Yeah, I'll bet this would deflect well in a in a good windstorm or in a load. It would probably take on some interesting shapes. I could just imagine how it would act in an earthquake.
Yeah.
Huh. Very cool, Natalie. It's just a great presentation on some really different and interesting projects. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.